Hi, this is Sherry. Welcome to my Journey in Clay, where we talk about all sorts of things that are pottery related. Today, I want to talk about some common perceptions and misperceptions about working with clay. Some of these things are things that you've read, and maybe like me, you've wondered, okay, this didn't work when I did it, so why not? The first thing I want to talk about is using a sponge to smooth your clay out. Using a sponge to smooth your clay out, like you get the sponge wet, you smooth your clay. If your clay is not high in grog, that works great. So for example, if you have porcelain clay and you take a sponge, maybe smoothing your seams over with some water, it works really well. But if you have a clay that is high in grog and you try to use that sponge to smooth it, what will happen is the reverse. The grog will kind of rise to the surface there as you are wiping away the rest of it. So it ends up having the opposite effect. So that is one of those things, using a sponge to smooth your clay, that it's just not right across the board. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Depends on the type of clay that you're using. The next thing I want to talk about is washing your bisqueware before you glaze it. So this is something that I had never even heard of until a couple years ago. And I read about it and my first thought was, washing your bisque? I mean, I've never done that. Why would you do that? But I looked into it a little bit further, and it originated, well, the first time I read about it, originated from somebody saying that their glaze did not cover. It looked like it was crawling a little bit in certain spots of their piece. And somebody suggested that perhaps their bisque ware had fingerprints or dust on it and that they should be, washing it. So that made sense, but it seemed overkill to me that after all the years that I have been doing pottery, that I have never washed my bisque. I have had occasions where the glaze didn't cover, but not frequently. So my take on this is, well, let me step back a second. Instead of saying my take, what I do now is, when I unload my kiln for a bisque load, I'll take a damp sponge and just sort of wipe it off a little bit. I think this is where my take on it comes in. My take on it is that actually dipping your bisqueware into water every piece, that to me seems like overkill. If you dip it into water, then you would have to wait for it to dry. And I just think that that's not necessary all the time. Firing twice. This is something else that I had never even thought was possible, to tell you the truth, until a couple years ago. And I have done this several times now. If I have a piece that is, well, it kind of depends on what's wrong with it. But if I have a piece, say that the glaze just doesn't look like I thought it was going to turn out, and it's just not attractive, then you can reglaze it a bit, or even touching up a bit, and fire a piece again. For example, I had a little, not a mug, but like a container, a jar with a lid. And in the very bottom of it, there was a little spot where the glaze didn't cover. And I thought, well, I don't know if I missed it or what, but I was able to put a little glaze on there and refire it. Before you refire, there's some different types of methods that people have suggested to help the glaze adhere to the piece, because it's not going to be the same as when you're initially glazing a piece of bisqueware, because now it's been fired. You can use hairspray. I have heard of that. I tried it. It didn't work so well for me, but that definitely people use that. What I do is I usually heat it up a little bit. I get the piece warm. Maybe I'll put it in the oven for just a couple of minutes. Not so hot that I can't handle it, but hot enough so that it's not cool to the touch. And I find for me that if I put glaze on top of that, it adheres pretty well. It still isn't perfect because, as I said, it's already been glazed once, but it has worked for me in the past. And one caution with that is if you have a piece that you have fired and either you have used it or perhaps you put water in it to test it, then you don't want to fire it twice, because firing something twice that is held liquid like that could be a disaster. I've never tried it, but it makes sense to me that if you have a piece that you have had water in or used, that it would not be a good idea to fire it again. Attaching your clay with slip or using vinegar to attach. These are two methods. Always you want to scratch, because that is really important, because if you scratch the two pieces, that gives it purchase and it will adhere better. And using slip or vinegar, I have used both. I used strictly vinegar for years and years and years because I was told that there was a chemical reaction between the vinegar and the clay. And it worked great. Then I read about attaching it with slip. So I tried that too. I usually use slip now, but in my experience, I have not found one superior to the other, although I would say that they both work. Crazing. Crazing is when you see those little tiny cracks in the glaze of your fired piece. There's different opinions on this, and there is, I would say, some science to it also. Some people believe that you should not eat or drink out of anything that has crazing, because there can be food and germs that get into the little cracks. Others say that, well, if you wash it, put it in the dishwasher especially, then it's clean and you should be able to use it. So I'm in that second camp. I do think that it is fine to use it. Yes, you want to wash it, and I would agree that putting it in the dishwasher would probably be, a little bit better than washing it by hand. But I think that that is perfectly okay to use it. Now, I might not sell a piece for, like if I had a mug that had crazing on the inside, I probably would not sell that piece, but I would 100% use that piece. Clay dust. This is one where there's really no ambiguity. Clay dust is not good for you to breathe. I would say keep your studio clean, which is true, keep your studio clean, but keep in mind anything you do to reduce clay dust. That means not letting your clay get, I'm really guilty of this. It's been hard for me to do this, but I am much better at it. When I'm working, if I'm hand building especially, I'll get little pieces of clay. And if I let those dry and then clean it up the next day, then I am spreading clay dust. Even though I might not see it, it is there. So keeping your clay wet as possible for your scraps, just keep in mind, reduce clay dust, because that is a scientific fact that clay dust is not good for you to breathe. So keep that in mind. Last topic is food safe or dinnerware safe. If you use a glaze that is deemed food safe, then your piece is food safe. If it's fired correctly and the glaze has been applied. So you can rely on glazes that you buy that say that they are food safe. I use the word dinnerware safe. You might use the word dinnerware friendly. Some glazes don't hold up as well. For example, if you have a matte glaze. I made a butter dish and I glazed it in a white matte glaze, and I thought it was very cute, and I kept it for myself and I used it. then I realized over time that the knife would make these little marks on the dish itself. And so that's an example where, okay, the glaze is safe. It's was deemed food safe, but it's not really attractive, or maybe not the best use when you use it for dinnerware, because you're going to get those little marks on that glaze. So just something to consider. These are my little tips for today, just things for you to think about. I have several links in the comments below where you can look up and make decisions for yourself for some of these topics. And I also put a few in there, links for people that I know that you can trust what they are putting out there, because that is one of the issues. You see so many different things. If you belong to Facebook groups, or just on Instagram, whatever, you will see responses. It's almost funny. Somebody will ask a question and the responses will be from one extreme to the other. They'll say opposite things. So keep in mind that when you're reading those responses, read them, think about them, but everybody's not right. And also, just because you were taught a certain way doesn't really mean that it's right. You were taught that, but go back and look. Is it true? Is it not true? So anyway, I put some in the comments below, some links, and some people that I know that you can trust what they're saying. Thanks for watching. Until next time.